Hello, everyone. We're back. We're ready to start. My name is Apoorva Dave. I work at the Digg. Really excited you're here today to walk through the product with us. This is a training webinar. So unlike some of our webinars, which you've probably seen where we kind of do the song and dance and the demo and so on, this is much more designed for someone who's already in the product, whether you're a trial or a customer, whether you're the admin or you're someone new to your environment. We just want to help you get productive with the product as quickly as possible. As you know, with many analytics-driven products, there are tons of things you can do with it. And the question is always, how do you get started quickly and efficiently? So we're going to kind of do things side by side here, so that you can get some hands-on practice. So if you're able to, please sign into your own environment right now, and that's a good way for you to follow along. I will also be sharing my screen here, so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. But it would be great for you to have your own browser tab open with your own Sysdig environment, and that's going to enable you to play along. One other thing before we get started here, you should see in the upper left-hand corner a little gray bar from Zoom, which lets you interact. And so there's a Q&A button, or there's a chat button. Either one's fine, really. Feel free to write in any questions that you have or any particular areas that you'd like to focus on, and I will do my best to help you. I also love to be stumped. So I'm hoping you can ask me the really hard questions that I can't answer. And if you do that, I will we'll do a couple things. One, I've got a colleague in the room with me, and either he can answer it or he can ask some of our engineering team to help you answer it. Or if we are fully stumped, we're going to get back to you with an answer. But I'd like to make sure that by the end of this session, you're kind of familiar with the basics of the product here. So as I mentioned, please log into your environment. At the same time, I'm going to share my screen here. And you're not going to look at Slack. You're not going to look at Salesforce. We're going to look at Sysdig. All right, here. Clean this up a little bit. Apologies. Cool. Okay. So this is our Sysdig demo environment. We've got a small environment running here, and what I want to do during the course of this webinar is I basically want to walk through the functionality associated with each of the main navigation points in the system. So we're going to start with exploration because that's the core and the biggest differentiator of our product. We'll talk about dashboarding because everybody loves their dashboards. And then finally, we'll talk about alerts and the events that alerts create. That should run us through the bulk of the training today. This is the basic onboarding webinar, so I'm going to stay away from doing anything crazy fancy. I'll kind of point out where there are ways for you to do more, but this will just kind of give you a good starting point. All right, so I'm hoping at this point you're signed into your environment and you're over on the Explore tab, and you may see a list that looks something like this, your hosts, and what's going on in your environment. Cool. So the Explore tab is the most differentiated part of our product. It's like an interactive top environment for your entire infrastructure. And there's another cool thing we're going to show you here, which is how we integrate with your tagging, whether that's tagging from AWS or tagging from your orchestration systems, such as Kubernetes, Mesos, Amazon ECS, and so on. I'm not going to go through the instrumentation process, which is something we normally do. I'm assuming that you or your administrator has already instrumented the system. So if you haven't, or some of this doesn't look familiar to us, please let us know, and separately we can help you get that running properly. There's a couple important things you need to know here. This is like, right now, I'm going to give you the 30-second pitch. If you do these two things, you're going to get a huge amount of value from Sysdig. Number one is understanding the grouping functionality that's right up here in this gray bar. And number two is understanding how to interact with this table. Okay, So grouping functionality. What grouping does is it allows you to entirely change how you look at your infrastructure based on tags. Those tags could be manually applied. They could be through your automation system, like a Chef Puppet, or could come from your orchestration system. So in this case, what this is saying is we're grouping everything by the host MAC address and then container ID. That means here, well, you can see the host and MAC address. And if I click on this plus, we actually get all the container IDs. That makes sense. Let's change it. In our system, this is running on AWS. We have some other tags here. Now, what you'll see is I just clicked on this gear, and then it gives us a list of default configurations. So, for example, if you're running Kubernetes or you're running Marathon or Mesos, et cetera, you'd have some basics for yourself to work with. Since we're just working off some Amazon tags, we built some customized configurations here. And clicking on any of these changes this view pretty significantly. Now you're looking at these tags, agent tag role, and then container image, and then container ID. So we've created a 3-tier structure. And so up here, you can see we have tags like what's running here, Cassandra or Mongo or Redis. When I click, I get container image. And then if I click again, I get the actual container ID. Perhaps more interestingly, if I go to Redis here, you can see there are 2 contained within the Redis environment. And so you can kind of get a better sense of what this hierarchical view looks like. This is entirely editable. Here's what I mean by that. Watch what happens when I kill agent tag role here. I'm going to click on this text. It's going to rebuild this. And now agent tag role is gone from the hierarchy entirely. What if I wanted to add it back? Well, I can click here and add it just as I like. So now I'm doing a hierarchy of agent tag role and container ID, which you'll see represented here. Why is this important? Well, this allows you to aggregate your data in your system in whatever way you'd like. But once you've aggregated it, you can analyze your data in a way that makes more sense to you. This is really, really important in large-scale infrastructure. It's essential in containerized environments because basically your orchestration system is spraying containers out wherever it feels like it has the resources to do so. So, for example, your Cassandra service in a containerized environment may be spread across 50 hosts. And trying to go to each of those 50 hosts in our previous view and look at them is basically kind of a useless exercise to understand how your Cassandra service is performing. Okay, so understanding grouping is absolute kind of priority number 1. If you don't have this implemented in Sysdig, then you're probably getting about 10 to 20% of the value out of the product. If you have questions about grouping, this is a good time to fire them in. As I mentioned, I should add to one point, like if you are using us with a standard setup like Kubernetes or Mesos or Amazon ECS, we will automatically grab that grouping information for you as long as we've instrumented the master. So in most cases, this environment will be set up for you. And having these presets means that you don't have to think too hard about a first step in terms of getting running. One thing I forgot to mention is you can, of course, save your own grouping configuration. So we made this new one here, and I could simply name this training webinar and click done, and then we have a saved version of that. I'm not going to do that right now, but it gives you a sense of how you can create your own groupings. Okay, let's talk about, let me switch this back to one of our standard groupings here. And let's talk about the explore table here. Here's the second critical thing you need to know. If you just understand grouping and you understand what I'm about to show you in terms of the explore table, you will be able to get a lot of value out of Sysdig. Once you've created any grouping, you can take any level of the grouping, you can click on that row in the table, and you get what we call a view. A view is a pre-built mini dashboard that gives you information on the selection you've chosen. So for what I've chosen right here, I'm getting everything. I'm getting an aggregate of all the information that's relevant to Cassandra. and you can see right here, this view, I'm getting an overview by host. There are lots of views over here and metrics on the left-hand side that you can click on to get more information about this particular selection you've chosen. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but I wanted to start by simply saying, if you understand grouping and you understand to click on a row to get more information, you're going to see a lot of power out of Sysdig. You may be thinking it's like you're a little maybe skeptical that I'm emphasizing this so much, but usually we find people who do that can figure out the rest of the system, the system over time if they want. We of course hope to accelerate that with you today. Okay, so now you know about views. I'm going to come back and focus on the Explore table for a moment here. A couple more things you can do with the Explore table. So first of all, you can see on the left-hand side, we've got pre-built views that give you kind of different layouts for the Explore table. This one is one of my favorites, the CPU and memory by container. So what you see here is for all containers, we get you very much container specific information. So we don't just talk about CPU as a percent of host, but we do talk about, we also talk about CPU as a percentage of the shares that have been allocated to that container and quota that have been allocated to those containers. If you're not familiar with those concepts, we just did a blog post on shares and quota. It's very similar to what you've been doing before with virtual machines, but applied to a container layer. We do a similar thing with memory and memory limits. Now, one thing I noticed here is that this column is actually running off the board here. And it turns out that these Explore tables are fully customizable. So I can do things such as I can resize. I can click on these gears to decide if I'd like to remove this column or actually kind of fine tune the column. So what you can decide are things like your time aggregation. So right now, the time aggregation is the average over the time period. You can in fact switch this to maximum or minimum. Finally, one last thing before I get to the question that just came in, is you can enable color coding. And I guess we can do that here just for kicks. I need to take a look at the numbers. This is manual color coding, but let's see here. We can implement this at 0.2. Should see some yellow pop up. Pop up. Forgot it. Let's see here. Shot. The color coding allows you to apply a threshold for any particular column. And what you'll see is here, okay, so I drop the limit to 0.2, and in this case, everything is yellow. It will give you per cell analysis of items that are dropping above or below the thresholds you care about. You can remove columns as well. I won't give you any more detail on that. But just know that this column is, this view is entirely editable. You can also add new columns here. I'll show you that because it is separate. So you click on the gear here above the entire table, and here are all the metrics that are in your environment. So you can add something, for example, something that might make sense here is capacity stolen. And you'll see you've got now an estimated number of stolen requests here. So you can entirely customize this. We've built a number of views here that get you up and down the stack. So we've built views for network, which talk about response time and network connections, which talk about network connections, and then requests, which talk about request time as well as number of requests. The other important element here is this tab up here, AWS services. If you've implemented your AWS integration, which I highly encourage that you do if you're running AWS, you simply have to give us your read-only credentials. We collect a bunch of information from AWS that includes not only your underlying EC2 hosts that you instrument with Sysdig agents, but also services that you cannot instrument with Sysdig agents. And then when we click here, you'll see again, we actually use the same grouping information to give you information about EC2 instances. So we could switch this over if you just wanted particular information about the host, for example. So let's we wanted to rank everything by their public IP addresses, for example. Here you go. Here's a list of all of the EC2 instances in my demo environment. One last thing up here, if you just want more space and want to get rid of this stuff, just click here on this arrow, and you've got a little bit more space. Okay, so we've just covered the Explore table in detail here. Good place to stop for questions. The Explore table is actually much of the way people use our technology for troubleshooting. It's such a kind of deep view into your system, and it allows you, again, using grouping to aggregate information any way you see fit. And that's something that's unique in terms of monitoring products. Stop here, take a sip of water, wait for questions, comments, concerns. All right, I'm going to keep going. If there is something in particular you want me to cover, please just chat that in as well, and I'll try to make sure I cover that. As I mentioned earlier, when you click on one of these rows, you get more information in terms of our views, and our views are pre-built dashboards. We will show you in a minute how to build your own dashboards, but it's pretty sweet to have these pre-built for you. And if you recall from instrumenting your own system, the way Sysdig auto-discovers applications means that you can drop an agent onto your host, we can figure out what's running there, and given these pre-built dashboards, you can have an instantaneous view in terms of what's going on in your environment. All right, so let's focus a little bit on this section down here now, which are our views. All of these panels are pretty interactive. So, for example, if I wanted to, this isn't the most exciting chart you've ever seen. Maybe we'll grab a different chart and then we'll do something more interesting. So, first of all, we're looking at a Cassandra service right now. So, if I search for Cassandra, you can see I've got my dashboards and then I've got pre-built views here. For example, instead of overview by host, let's go to the Cassandra overview. The Cassandra overview will give us information that's really specific to Cassandra: read writes, read request latency, and so on. Let's suppose I wanted to zoom in here. I can hold down the mouse button and select, and not surprisingly, this is going to zoom in. I can click the reset zoom button, and it's going to reset everything to the previous value where I was before. Okay. So let's X this out and get a full view here of all of our dashboards. There are these pre-built application views. There are views that are specific to hosts and containers. That's kind of understanding the underlying host infrastructure. There are views for networking. There are views that are specific to the particular orchestration systems that we do significant integration with. And I won't go into those right now. And finally, there are views on topology. And for those of you who've seen our product at work, you know that one of the powerful parts about it is creating a topology view here. And of course, this is a very simple topology, so you don't see very much here. Let's see if I can grab something a little more complicated. There you go. At least we can see a little bit of a topology view here where the web server is communicating, in this case, to our client. So this provides you a way of understanding the relationships in your system, again, all created automatically without you needing to do it. All right, so we've covered at a high level, we've covered these views on the left-hand side. I think they require a little bit of exploration to find exactly what you're looking for, but the value of them being pre-built makes it a whole lot easier than trying to build it all from scratch. Now, actually, I'm sorry, I think my voice just cut out. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. It sounds like you can hear me okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so these views actually don't contain all of the metrics that Sysdig Cloud collects. In addition to these views, which pre-build them into particular dashboards, you can come over here to metrics. And what you'll see is a different breakdown here at different layers of the stack. Let me go back to Cassandra here for a moment. So you can do application checks, which are those are pieces of information we pull directly from your applications. Containers, files, hosts. We also do JMX and JVM metrics, as well as getting down to the process and system and custom metrics such as StatsD. So all of these metrics are collected, and if I pull down on any of these, so for example, Cassandra is a Java process, so I can pull down on JVM here, and you can see that we have a number of metrics here specifically associated with the JVMs of your environment. So for example, I can click on JVM thread count, and what I get is an individual time chart here. So you have detailed analysis capabilities, switching the aggregation. You may switch it from an average to a sum or a maximum. And you can show it as a time series or top 10 map or a number or a tile. And finally, you can do a segmentation. So I think in this case, there will only be one process running here, but you could segment it, for example, by process command line or process name. So what this would mean is you're getting all the thread counts, and then you're segmenting them by process name. So in this case, there's only, there are a few more, they're just not running. So this is a good example here. Since I segmented it by process name, you can see that we have Cassandra running on this machine, we have Python running, as well as the Sysdig Cloud agent and Psyched, which actually I have no idea what that is. So if I were actually troubleshooting the system, I'd probably want to go figure out what Psyched is. So now you have a view into metrics. And so even if you don't see what you're looking for within our views, you should hop over to metrics and you can go deeper. This is also the place where you might want to look at custom metrics. So for example, here, what you see here is all of the StatsD metrics that we're collecting from your system. Sysdig has an incredibly powerful way to collect StatsD metrics out of the box. As long as your application is writing StatsD metrics out to anywhere in the system, we will see them and we will capture them. You don't need to point them to us. You don't need to set up a special StatsD server. We'll just figure it out. It's the same model for JMX metrics as well. As long as you've enabled them, we'll find them and we'll collect them. And then, of course, once you click on one of these, they operate exactly the same. So in order to see this, I would click over to Mongo because it looks like we are collecting Mongo metrics here. And we can click on this metric and we can see we don't have much going on right now. Nonetheless, it's a way for you to see all your StatsD metrics in one place, and it's fully searchable. So if I was only interested in Mongo metrics, there you go. There's your list of Mongo metrics. Okay, we're almost finished with the Explore section. The next thing I want to talk about are time controls, but I want to stop here again and ask for questions on what you've seen in either the top area of Explore or the bottom area of the pre-built views and metrics. Okay, no questions so far. I assume that means everybody is stunned at the amazing things you can do with Sysdig. Hopefully, you're also trying this along, in your own environment. I understand you may not have the exact same things running that I do, but hopefully, this is just a really good chance to click around and see what there is to see. All right. The last thing, there are actually two more things I want to talk about here, which are, first of all, time controls, and then we'll talk about overlaying events. So let's switch back to Cassandra. Let's go to Cassandra View. So Cassandra Overview here. So let's see what's going on with Mongo. Perhaps Mongo's a little more interesting. little bit more going on here. Okay. So we're in Mongo. I'm going to switch this. Let's start talking about time controls. Perfect. Okay. Time controls give you a lot of different options. In fact, one of the things we're actually actively working on right now is how to simplify this and improve it. It's very, very powerful. We've definitely kind of focused on power first here. First of all, you've got these presets. These are probably the easiest part of time controls to use. So for example, I might switch this to 1 day, then we'll reload here and you'll see this is highlighted. Now, everything that you see on your screen, top and bottom, is done on a 1 day aggregation here. You also have the ability, I should mention one other thing, you can switch back here to real-time mode. And in real-time mode, you're going to see, you're going to see a very fine-grained amount of information over a small period of time. And so this is probably useful if you're trying to understand what's going on in your system right now versus troubleshooting a system problem over some period of time. Okay. If you come over here to this time bar, you pull down, you're going to get much more control in terms of what you want to do with time. So first of all are the quick jump areas up here. So if you just have a time frame you want to go to, so quick, I need to go to an hour ago, great. There you go, you've hopped to an hour ago. Let's suppose you'd like to do something longer here. You can use the manual range, which gives you a from to option, and you'll see it's all kind of wizard driven here to kind of simplify your input. Or you can go from for a length of time. So for example, let's go from 7:10 at 8:20 for 2 hours. Okay, so we want to go to this, and so now it's brought up because it's older information here. You also have a step through option. And so if you wanted to simply step forward, in this case, you want to step forward for an hour at a time. When you click the forward button here, we're actually aggregating data for, providing data for the next hour. And so this is an interesting way for you to step through windows of time and see what's happening. Okay. One final option here is compare with. Compare with is interesting. So what compare with does, it might be obvious here, which is it allows you to compare 2 time periods. So what we're saying here is compare with 2 hours before, or you could go to an absolute period of time, which would kind of allow you a manual input. We'll switch it to relative here. When we click compare, you'll notice a couple things here. So first of all, this switches. So instead of absolute value, you're now seeing percentages. So you're basically saying, well, in this column, what's the CPU percent now versus 2 hours before? Similarly, you see some changes over here where you see a comparison between right now and the time before. Similarly, it's kind of a little bit hard to see here. Let me get rid of this because the values are exactly the same, but you're seeing a line for then and now. So this gives you an ability to easily overlay 2 time periods and get a sense of what's going on. So then you can see up here, we highlight in orange the fact that you're doing a comparison. All right, let's turn compare off. Go back to a normal view. We've now covered time controls. Stop here and see if you have any more questions. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. One last thing here, which is overlaying events here. Hopefully I got a good time frame. Okay, so the other thing you can do with our system is overlay events with your metrics. Events are uh, more or less arbitrary text strings that may be output from your other systems or maybe manually input from humans into our system that describe context around your metrics. So a good example of that could be, hey, this alert fired at this time, which would be something automatic that our system does. Hey, this container got killed. That's something that our system does automatically. Hey, marketing just launched a big campaign and we saw a spike. And, so that may be something you manually input. And my favorite, you know what? I forgot to have my coffee this morning. I'm probably going to screw up the system later today. That's another arbitrary event you could put into the system. Clicking here on this exclamation point gives you full control of events in the system. So here you can, you can decide to free text for particular words that are in an event, and that would allow you to overlay them into the system. And you can filter out which events you'd like to see. So you may choose, look, I don't want to see events related to other metrics. I just care about this particular metric I'm looking at. You may want events related to other nodes. You may also want to filter on different statuses of your events. And this will make a little bit more sense when we cover alerting at large, but I think you probably get it, which is, show me things that are kind of in the state right now of active or all right, a severity level on a particular alert, or things that are unresolved versus resolved. Okay, so great question coming in. There's a question on creating alerts. So this, I'm kind of showing you the output here, the result of having an alert, and then kind of overlaying it with your system. But of course, you could also create alerts too, and I'll get to that in just 1 second. So thanks for that question. Another question, just could you see event overlays over a 2-week period? Yeah, absolutely. What you would indicate is the first thing you want to do is switch to 2 weeks. And when you switch to 2 weeks, you'll see here we've had a number of events that happened over within our system. So this is the case where we may be looking at this and saying, you know what, this is too much right now. So then let me go use my search functionality and filter this down, or filter them down based on any of these other characteristics. Good question. Thank you. So we're going to get to dashboards in a moment. I know we've been focused on the pre-built views, but everything I've talked about in terms of time controls and event overlays work the same in dashboards as they do in these views. So you've just kind of gotten kind of a really good sense of core interactive functionality that people would use within views, and it's applicable to dashboards as well. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about dashboards. So let's, since we did get a question about alerts, let's talk about alerts first, and then we'll talk about dashboards. Okay, so alerts. In every single panel here, you have a number of control options. These are Zoom control options. I won't go into that. This is the Add Alert button, and this is the Pin to Dashboard button. So you can, we'll get to pinning to dashboard in a moment, but let's add an alert here. And so in this case, this is request count over time. I want to see if, let's see here if we have a network view. The question before came in was asking about setting an alert on basically kind of core infrastructure requirements. So I think the ask was on memory, network, CPU. So I just brought up a view here of the Mongo server where we could do something like create an alert off of memory usage. So let's click on Add Alert, and you'll see the Add Alert capability pops up here. Okay. So alerting is an essential part of any monitoring tool. Our alerting is pretty powerful because it's adaptive. And what that means is as you assign, as you create an alert and you use tags to create that alert, anything that shows up later after you've set the alert and has those tags will automatically inherit the alert. This is really great for dynamic environments where you may have an orchestration system that's auto-scaling up or auto-scaling down containers or moving them in order to leverage resources more effectively. You can move containers, kill them, bring new ones in, whatever, and the alert can apply across that entire service. You can of course add more alerts. These are auto completing capabilities. So you can see as I delete this, it's already suggesting to me that Mongo matches here. You can get a complete pull down of all your tags that match with this arrow. You then go and set a condition. And most people actually use manual, even though we do have both baselining, which is anomaly detection, host comparison, which is outlier detection on a host basis. The vast majority of people actually still use manual thresholds because you have much more control over what they look like. You then, in the case of manual, actually, I'll step over here for a moment. In the case of these capabilities, you choose a set of metrics that you'd like to baseline off of, and it's by default set to all. In manual, you actually select a metric you'd like to alert on. So, for example, we might want to search on a memory. Okay, so for example, we may want to choose memory limit used %. And we're going to take the maximum for time. So over any period of time, what's the maximum? And for the group aggregation, we'll also choose the maximum. Let me clarify what the group aggregation is here. As I mentioned, you're using a tag, in this case Mongo, to set an alert. And maybe, making this up, maybe 100 nodes have that tag. So you're running basically 100 copies of Mongo. Then what you're saying here is what I'd like to do is take the maximum for a time period across all 100 of those nodes and then set that to 90%. You then have the ability to segment this alert. And here's what segmenting means. So in the case of none, you're saying treat everything that's tagged with Mongo as one unit. So only alert me when that one unit has, kind of exceeded 90 across the entire scope. Alternatively, you can break it down. So you could break this down, for example, by let's look at my cloud tags here. Let's see here. We could break this down by, let's think of something that would make sense to break this down by. We could break this down by our auto-scaling group name. So what this is saying now is take your group, everything that is a part of Mongo, and break it up into your auto-scaling groups. And then alert me whenever one of those auto-scaling groups exceeds the threshold I've set. Okay, so I've given you kind of a basic view of how you set alerts. This can be pretty complicated, especially the more control you want and the finer grained you're going to get. You can really make this very, very specific. For example, you can do more segmentations. You can add additional segmentations that you'd like to alert off of. You can do where clauses. And so this gives you additional clarification. So not only would you like to alert, in this case on Mongo, where this and this and this is happening, but where let's see here, where a particular, get rid of this, I think I'm, pardon me, must have chosen a poor example for this one. You can also break this up where an additional process is running. So that gives you additional clarification for not only do I need to alert where Mongo's happening, but where I've got a particular process running on that machine as well. And then finally, you have a time period. So once you're asking to say, well, once this condition is hit and it lasts for at least, for example, 1 minute, then alert me. One thing I didn't show you here, and we won't go into this in any detail, but we have an advanced alerting mechanism here, which when you switch to, let me just do that again so you can see what happened. You switch to advanced here, and then you can do multivariate alerting. So not only can you alert on one condition, but you can alert on multiple conditions present at the same time. We're going to have a whole separate class on doing advanced alerting, so I'm not going to drive into that right now. This is probably another good place to stop for questions. I actually think that alerting it's pretty challenging because it's one of the first things that people want to do, but it actually requires a pretty good understanding of both your system and our system to do a good job with alerts. So I would highly encourage that you start with some simple alerts, single manual thresholds with no segmentations is a good place to start, and then you kind of grow it from there. But it is a good place to stop and ask for questions. So I'll take a sip here and see if you guys have any questions. All right. Feel free if something comes up to fire it in. You have some additional information here in step 3 to set the name of the alert, the description, and also severity you use in which I showed you earlier. This information also comes through when you send out an alert notification. And that leads us to step 4, which are notification channels. You can send email, you can push to Amazon SNS, you can push to Slack, PagerDuty, and the final option here is create a Sysdig capture. And some of you may be familiar with the open source Sysdig product. When you create a Sysdig capture, we create what's called a capture file for that particular machine where the alert has fired. This gives you a record of every single system call that fired on the machine when the alert was firing. That gives you the ability to do some very deep troubleshooting. Even if your containers are long gone, if the host is long gone, you have all the information there to dig in and see at a system call level and a payload level what was happening in the environment. It's really, really powerful, relatively new functionality for our system. And you get to decide if you want to store it in Sysdig Cloud, or you can store it in your own S3 bucket. You can set up a file name, a time frame, and you can also use Sysdig's filtering language to set up a filter capture to make the captures more efficient. Again, this is a pretty advanced topic. I'm not going to cover this in detail right now, but if you are familiar with the open source Sysdig product, you're probably really psyched about this because this is far more powerful than what you get from most troubleshooting tools, let alone monitoring tools that basically focus on the dashboard only. Let me cancel out of there and actually go over to the alerts tab so you can see what you see here. This is your view of all your alerts. So you can see them individually here. These are all the alerts that are set in my demo environment. You can see over here which ones are enabled. You can see how many times they've fired over time. So we can kind of look at this one. From here, we could take this alert and we have these options. We can disable, delete, explore. Explore is the most interesting in the sense like it drops you back into the explore view at the most recent time that particular alert has fired. So you can see here this time frame has been set according to when it had been fired. The output of an alert is an event. There are 2 types of events in our system. One are alert events. So this is the output of when an alert has fired. So here, what you're looking at is, if you imagine you had one alert in your system and it had fired 10 times, you'd have 10 rows here. And you could click on any of these to get a quick view of your environment and see, where the alert has fired. This now gives you 2 options: compare to now and explore event. Let's click on explore event. Does what I showed you before, which is it drops you into the explore tab with the time set properly. Compare to now actually does something slightly different, which is it gives you the time frame of the alert as well as the time frame or the right now time frame. So you can see in this time chart, we've got 2 rows, not just one. And that gives you the previous versus the current. And we see that up here as well. So you can see that we've got paused on 2 hours versus July 9th at the slightly different time frame when the alert fired. One question came in from Gabriel. For notifications that get sent to email or Slack, can we customize the alert message? Can graphs or data related to the event be included in the notification? Excellent question. You can definitely customize the alert message in terms of the details that we were looking at in the alert panel itself in terms of message and severity. And these events, pardon me, these events also support Markdown. So you could include URLs, for example, if you wanted to send someone to some specific playbook, for example. Also, all alerts include a link back into Sysdig Cloud so that you can actively explore. The thing you cannot do today is actually include more data or a visualization or a snapshot of the graph in the alert. That's a piece of functionality what we'd like to add in the future, but we don't have it today. Great question. All right, so we've talked a little bit about alerting. We were talking about events here. Let me see here. I'll pull back into events for a second. We also have custom events. And as I mentioned, custom events can be pulled in from a number of different places. Those custom events could be things like Jenkins just did a push, or we've committed some new code, or I've made a manual change to the system. We've also just recently announced a really cool integration with Slack that we call Sysdig Bot, and it's basically a universal Slack event router. So you could pipe all of your various monitoring alerts into Sysdig Cloud. Imagine getting all your alerts from your Elk Stack or Splunk or New Relic or anything along those lines piped in here as well as your support tickets in Desk or Jira or anything like that, all in one place, all accessible by our event correlation mechanism. And so that would be represented here in custom events. We also automatically pull in container associated events for Docker, Kubernetes, Mesos, and so on. Cool. So we've talked a little bit about events. The last piece remaining are dashboards, and we're more or less on time here. Dashboards are dashboards. I think that, to be completely honest with you, our goal with dashboards is just to try and make them painless. You've set up many, many dashboards before. We're trying not to reinvent the wheel. We'd like to make it easier. So we've got a few things going on here. First of all, because I haven't gotten to show it yet, in terms of fun things that you can do with a dashboard, you can, of course, build a topology view that has your entire infrastructure or just part of your infrastructure. And this gives you the ability to do what we call Google Maps for your infrastructure and dig in on almost any service level to see what's going on inside your containers. That's fun. How do we get there? What do we create? What do we do? Let's start with our dashboard wizard. So you can see over here, you've got my dashboards. You can click on my dashboards here, and this gives you a very simple way to get started. Continuing our Mongo example here, we might say, well, I need a dashboard on Mongo, and where's the scope? And scope uses tags to limit the amount of data we pull in. So I may choose something like my cloud provider availability zone is, well, I don't know them off the top of my head. I can just pull down here and choose US East 1B. Okay, and now we create a MongoDB in US East 1B. Click create. It's creating it for us. You can see it appears up here on the left. And voila, we have data. Dashboarding made much easier. Now, of course, this may not be the exact dashboard you want. So we'll have to do some work here to edit this. First of all, before I forget, let me show you the controls over here for the dashboard itself. If I click down this, I can rename it, delete it, or I can share it. And so I could switch this to be a shared dashboard. And if I click on this, everyone in my environment can see it. And you can see now it appears down here in my shared dashboards. Okay, let's do some lightweight configuration stuff here. So first of all, I can resize anything I would like by grabbing the bottom right corner. That's ugly, but you get the point. I can edit any one of these individual panels. So here I can change the title. I can change what we're showing it as. So, for example, a time series, a top 10, a map, or a number. Not, obviously not every visualization type makes sense for every kind of data. You can say, oh, this isn't actually the metric I wanted. Let me change that metric. Let me change the aggregation mechanisms that we talked about before, and you can segment by. So you can, of course, segment by, for example, host, for example. In this case, I think we only have, we have 2 hosts running, so perfect. Great. So you have all these customization capabilities, and of course, you can see, pardon me, if you go a little end up here, right mouse, grab this and move it around. This is all pretty basic. Now, let's do something a little more advanced. Let's head back over to the Explore tab and say, we want to add more metrics to our dashboard. So let me click on Mongo. And, I have this stats D metric that I really care about. And I'd like to add this to a dashboard. Now I can click on Pin to Dashboard. And if I say Mongo in East US1B, pin it and open. This will take me back to the Mongo dashboard, and you'll see that our new metric is right here, Mongo stats D mapped over time for Mongo. Okay, so now we've done something pretty cool, and this isn't the most. I wouldn't say this is the standard workflow for creating dashboards. Usually, you get a blank sheet of paper, and the dashboard of the app says, "Go ahead, create whatever you want." Here, imagine you're exploring your environment and you're looking at metrics that matter to you. So right here, I was on metrics. Now maybe I want to hop back to the Mongo previously built dashboard, right? So we've got the service performance Mongo dashboard. Let me take a look. Oh, wow, this is cool. Hey, look, someone already built, like a topology for this. We see things like top collections by number of requests. And now I can simply pin this to the dashboard that I want. So you can get data within context and then bring it to a dashboard. And that makes it much simpler to actually create any of the dashboards you want. Once you have it here on your dashboard panel, you then have the ability, of course, to edit that and make it look exactly like you want. You can set alerts from dashboards, just like you can kind of set alerts from the view panels. You can do filtering. So you can choose to show your event correlations just like we did in the dashboard panel, and you can do it here within your dashboards as well. Let me see here. I think we've got everything from the dashboarding perspective. What I would say, I'm going to stop here. We're almost through our training here. What I would say is that if you're new to Sysdig and just getting started with it, actually start with the Explore panel. Explore is the most powerful way to start understanding all the data in your system. And because Sysdig does a great job of collecting thousands of metrics right out of the box, it's easier to just start with what we've already done and what we've already created. And then after that, get into building your own dashboards and alerts. Okay, so we've run through grouping, the Explore table, the underlying views that we create. We've run through alerts, and we've run through dashboards. A lot of information for an hour, but I'm hoping this will accelerate your ability to get value out of Sysdig. I'd like to just stop now, see if you have any other questions, and I would also like to make an admission, which is this is our first time running a training webinar like this for folks who are already signed up. So I'd be really interested in your feedback if you want to chat it in, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, whether you were hoping to cover something but you didn't see us cover it. This would be a great time to let us know, and we'd love to keep improving this and help people get to productivity faster. So thank you very much. Any last questions, comments, or concerns? I'm just going to sit tight here for a moment and let them roll in. All right. You always know where to contact us. Feel free to find us on Twitter at Sysdig or email us at info@sysdig.com. You also have probably noticed that there are pop-up windows that appear in your app that we send to you when we have particular messages about what's new in the app. You can also write to us there, and we'll respond to you, and hopefully we can just help you with anything that you need to get value out of the system. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time, and have a great day.